Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 789. Yes, this is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to talk about Formula One news. Of course, we always talk about Formula One news on off-race weekends, but before doing that, I have to bring in my co-host, and you know what that means. I got to go all the way to the right coast of our nation, nestled in our nation's capital, where she applies her skills as a master statistician, working on numbers and words and meanings. I don't know what it is she does, but it's impressive as heck. You know her, you love her. It's the lovely, the redoubtable Grace! Grace, how you doing?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows what I do.
Nobody. Well, we can't know, Grace, because you work for the government.
All right, I don't work for that part of the government.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No.
Right.
There are legitimately people that work for that part of the government now.
Yeah.
People don't know what I do because it's not like teacher or nurse or, engineer.
Race car driver.
Right. It's just I don't have like a nice one word that describes what I do that people are like, oh, I know what that word is.
I have the same issue. I work in the technology business. I have the same issue. It's difficult to explain kind of what I do. So yeah, it's same thing. People ask, well, what do you do? And then I go into this like big soliloquy, and they're like, oh hell, dude. It's not exactly rocket science, is it? So anyway, crazy.
I used to always tell people that when I was dating, so I did online dating, and I knew if I really liked the guy or not, if I actually explained, because that's always like small talk. What do you do? And if I just went, 3 words, I really wasn't into this. But if I actually kind of said something, I was like, oh, well, this guy should get a date too. I actually thought he was interested in. I cared enough to share exactly what I do with him.
There you go.
So I don't know.
Well, Grace, I look, I gotta be honest with you. There's a part of me that wishes we would have recorded on Monday night and avoided diving into the deep end of the pool of inappropriate behavior. But here we are.
But then we would have talked about Yuri Vips, right? So I don't think we would have gotten away from the inappropriate behavior. Yeah,
we'd have been in the deep end either way.
We're just in the deeper end of the deeper end of the inappropriate language.
Right. We were at the 5-foot section of the swimming pool. Now we're in the 16-foot,
Nelson Piquet said, Yuri Vips, hold my beer.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Hold my beer, man.
Sit
down, son. Let me show you how it's done.
That is correct.
That was, it's crazy. Well, I woke up this morning and was treated to the unique stylings of one Matt Bishop, the communications director of Aston Martin. But I was thought, Grace, this is going to be great. They were interviewing him. He's going to give him the whole Ralph Schumacher treatment where he tells Nelson to F off and it describes Nelson as having a stiff rictus, which for my money, folks, that was the high water mark of Matt Bishop's journalism career at F1 magazine. But he didn't, alas, didn't say that. I was hoping, but he did not. So anyway,
he's calmed down, right?
It's a kinder, gentler Matt.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's older now.
Yeah, he's not the guy that wears Hawaiian shirts, threatened to kick everybody's ass in the paddock anymore.
Although, if anybody needs to be attached to the word rictus, it is Nelson Piquet, not Ralph Schumacher.
True. I would agree with that. Nelson, yes. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Nelson, shall we?
I guess we must.
Okay, so up front, look, I do have to say this. I thought it was interesting because there's a lot of folks new to Formula One, and so everybody's like, who the hell is Nelson Piquet? What the heck? So, okay, just Nelson's a 3-time world champion. I mean, he was the bomb. I mean, he was a very good driver, raced against some of the best like Senna and Prost and Mansell. And so, yeah, I mean, he knows his way around a car. That's for sure. Brazilian. But anyway, it came out yesterday. Lewis Hamilton sent out a message which condemned the comments as people pieced together. There were comments from 3-time champ Nelson Piquet made last November. So Nelson was on a Brazilian podcast. They were talking about last year's British Grand Prix where Lewis, tapped Max went in the wall, that kind of thing.
You don't put a wheel in cops, that incident.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You don't put a wheel in on cops, man. So anyway, he was talking about that on that, and he used a term during that interview in his native tongue, which is Portuguese or a Brazilian version of that, and it was deemed a racial slur, period. And when Lewis commented on that, the teams quickly released, pretty much a unified front from Formula One up and down the paddock. So you had the teams releasing statements, Formula One releasing a statement, the FIA quickly released, several drivers.
But none of them from the teams or F1 mentioned Nelson Piquet.
No. Well, neither did Lewis, though, right?
I know, but it's just like it would. I agree that if you just were like dropped into this, you'd be like, what? Like it just seemed like, yeah, aren't we all against this? Like there's no context, and at no point did they say Nelson Piquet, shut your face, or you were wrong, or you were racist, or we condone Nelson Piquet. His name was nowhere attached to this. It was just like a bunch of words that reading them out of context, I would have just been like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point you made, because there's that notion of it's kind of like I saw all the statements first, but I had to really kind of dig to figure out who they were talking about.
So I feel that the statements are meaningless. If you're not going to say, I condemn this person for doing this exact thing, and this is why I'm mad about it, and this is why it shouldn't happen, and this is why it's not okay. If you're just going to talk in vagaries, whatever. I mean,
well, yeah, it was the vagary, because I read those statements and I thought, well, okay, so who's for it? Nobody's. It was like. And I understand like the pink ribbon about breast cancer, right? And it's like, oh, it's awareness, and it's as huge, and it has been for years, this mass campaign. Right. And it's like, oh, it's against cancer. And I'm thinking, but who's for breast cancer? Nobody. Right? And it's the same with these statements. I mean, who's for racial slurs? Right. Nobody.
Who's like, no, I prefer racial statements. I just think it's not brave, and they should not be like, good job, Formula. No, terrible job, Formula One.
Right.
Terrible job.
Right. Well, to your point, I had to dig to figure out who said what. I had no idea. I appreciate Lewis condemning it, and he should, but I don't know. I didn't know what happened, right? So I had to dig for it. Now, Lewis did call for action to be taken, as did Damon Hill. Damon came to his defense too, was asking for that. And recent reports, as of today, Wednesday, suggest that Nelson's pretty much been banned from the F1 paddock, which but Nelson doesn't work for F1. He doesn't speak for F1. Doesn't speak for the FIA. Doesn't speak for any of the teams. He doesn't speak. As far as his leverage around Formula One, his association with Formula One is he's a past champion.
No, but this is what gets carried in the news, right? So, I mean, that's something we talked about, being an American fan, with Formula One finally being on ESPN. It's nice that the chyron at the bottom is no longer either somebody had some weird sex party, right? Or there was some big crash, or it's just like Lewis Hamilton won, or Max Verstappen won. Oh, it's so nice to see my sport portrayed in my country in a positive manner. So I just think that that's not what you want. And football has that phrase, bringing the sport into, disrespect. Yeah, that's it. That's what this is doing. Even though you have nothing to do with anything, you are bringing the sport into disrepute, and we can't have that. Right.
Yeah. It's like, waking up and see headlines that somebody deliberately crashed in a Grand Prix to give the team. Oh, wait. That was Nelson's son. Zing. 2008. Look that one up if you're new to F1. You'll see the joys of Nelson in that one. So anyway, Lewis had called for action. The paddock, unified in their condemnation of it. It was interesting, though. I mean, look, I'm just on the outside looking in, but I'm reading all of the social media that was in full swing with lots of discussions and all kinds of comments. Some folks on social media, understandably, totally aghast at the comments. Some not surprised because of the irascible nature of Nelson Piquet. If you've been around Formula One, he's a pretty irascible character, and he's a very flamboyant personality. Others were denying the term was racist, while others felt that, and they were arguing that I saw a lot of, several Brazilians that live there saying, actually, culturally, this is kind of what it means, and it's not what, the translations say. So there was all of this conversation around it. But then, I even read things like on social media, people saying, well, Yeah, they absolutely should ban Nelson from the paddock having anything to do with Formula One. They should take his titles away. His daughter Kelly should also be banned from Formula One because she currently dates Max Verstappen. And then they were saying, well, this is all tied back to Max because he dates Kelly, who is Nelson's daughter, and Max works for Red Bull. And Red Bull just announced that they had that separation. They parted ways with Yuri Vips, who himself last week was over dropping racial slurs at the Call of Duty game last week.
Yes.
And so, you can see where all these dots start to get connected in the crazy world of social media. But go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, one thing is, I don't ever think the technicality, like people like to argue that, like, well, I looked it up in the dictionary. Like, I think calling somebody ignorant is always a good example of that. If I call you ignorant, I could say, oh, Todd, in the dictionary, it just says you didn't know something. You didn't know about Nelson Piquet. I called you ignorant. Oh, I didn't mean it to mean that. We all know what ignorant means. And if I called you ignorant, I don't think you'd be very happy with me.
Right.
Even though the dictionary just says someone who's uninformed. So
Right.
we don't need, that is not how language works. And we don't need to be talking about like, oh, well, the dictionary says it's not that bad, or culturally people use that word. That is not a word that is used to uplift a person. It was
Right.
not a word used as a positive connotation. He didn't say, oh, Lewis Hamilton, that guy, I really like that guy. Not as good as Senna, but I really like that guy. No.
Yeah.
The word was used, whatever word fits in that space was meant to demean him, and it demeaned him because of the color of his skin, and that's not okay.
Right.
It's, I mean, I don't, I feel, I also hate that, we have all these like colloquial terms like, it's a racial slur, or like, I mean, I live in DC, so there's a lot of discussion about the Washington football team being a toxic workplace. I don't think what Dan Snyder's running is a toxic workplace. That seems like a very nice colloquial way to describe how that team is operating. So I think sometimes we get caught up in these, like, I don't know. It just seems like not a strong enough word to really describe how damaging this is to people and what you should say. And I think it's really easy to just be like, oh, it's just words. It's only just words when they're not because of your skin color or who you are or what organs you happen to have. And so I do think it's something we have to take seriously. I'm not surprised that Nelson Piquet said this. We all know who he is. His butt's been hanging out for a long time, but that doesn't mean that we should all just go, oh, he's that racist uncle, and we just let him back to Thanksgiving either.
Yeah, and I think when this all blew up, Nelson, then today came out and his camp offered an apology, and he said that the term's lost in translation, that in context it's not a racial slur, nor was it intended to be such. And to your point, Grace, I think for me, regardless of the parlance around this, when describing the incident from last year's British Grand Prix, I referred to them as Lewis and Max, who came together and put Max in the wall, right? Or however you viewed it. I talked about Lewis and Max coming together. Max went in the wall. Lewis, finished the race. That's what I talked about, right? And so despite the translation or not, I'm sure Nelson knows who Lewis is as a 7-time champ.
They've met.
Yeah. And despite the cultural nuance and meaning, I think its history, its etymology is such that using the word is at best incredibly ill-advised and at worst akin to racially abusive. And in that light, Lewis is right. There's just no room in F1 for that kind
He
of
meant it in a disrespectful manner.
He did.
Again, like the term
It was
boy
denigrating.
is a good example of that too. If I called you, I was like, oh, you boy, I'm pretty sure you'd come through that screen and beat the crap out of me, right? Like it is a term that has a load to it, because that's how language works. And even though if I just looked it up in the dictionary, you'd be like, oh, it just says a little kid, it's denigrating. And that's the way that word is used. And that's the way Nelson Piquet used it.
Yeah, it's I think it's like, it's one of those things where when you look at that word and whatever its translation may or may not be, the literal translation is there if you look at the etymology of the word too. But also, I mean, look, there's a lot of people that don't like Lewis at all. And if they were describing the incident, they may have said things like, oh, when the petulant man-child hit, Max, or when the jerk hit Max, or the narcissist hit Max, or whatever. I've seen all of these terms used to describe Lewis, and, that may be fine, but none of them were referencing an immutable fact about Lewis, know? And so I think that's pretty tough. I've read a lot of comments from people, that don't like him, but they're not using that kind of terminology.
Right.
There's a multitude of things you could say. I call him Lewis, but if you're a fan, but this is something quite different indeed.
Yes.
And I suspect, Grace, per his apology, I think Nelson knows it is too.
Exactly. I think would you have said it to his face is often, but you have to think about things when you say them. I mean, we're just a podcast, right? That some people listen to, and I try to be thoughtful. It doesn't always happen, but I try to be thoughtful about the things that come out of my mouth because I don't necessarily know who's listening. I don't know how old they are. I try not to swear, even though, again, not always good at that one either. But what I do in my personal life at home, maybe I swear all the time, but I try not to.
You're a sailor, Grace.
What is that? A long kiss goodbye, right? Like she went in and sailors came out, right?
Yeah, right.
I might swear in my own life, but I try to
Right.
remember, right, that this is a podcast that's consumed by a lot of people and not everybody cares for that, right?
Yeah.
So my salty sailor language. So I think you always have to be cognizant, and he's cognizant of what he's doing too. I think that, and I don't know, I always find apologies are weak sauce because they usually amount to, I'm sorry, I hurt, your feelings were hurt, Todd.
Yeah.
Not, I said something that was wrong and I should
Right.
not have said that and I apologize. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it hurt you, little snowflake. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, right.
I'm over people's apologies because usually they're lame.
Right. I mean, to be honest with you, this is just me, but in my opinion, but I just feel like Nelson would pick up the phone, call Lewis and say, hey, dude, I apologize for that. That,
And have a conversation about that word,
yeah,
right?
let's talk about it.
Because I think that is something, I mean, this is what came out of it. That several, not out of this incident, but I think the We Race is one, the Black Lives Matter protests, the murder of George Floyd. Several of the drivers said they talked to Lewis because they're like, yo, I'm white. I live with white people. I don't understand. And they had a conversation with Lewis about it. Right. I totally get that. I totally have had conversations with guys that are just like, why are women always like this? I'm like, well, this is why women are always like this. And they go, oh, I didn't see it from that perspective. Okay, right. So that's why you have to have everybody at the table and you have to have conversations with the people that are, culturally different than you, live in a different world than you do. Talk to Lewis about it. See why this was not okay and what you could do about it. I think that's the most hopeful thing we could have out of this, that drivers or anybody else goes, I don't get why this is a problem. Let's talk about it because it clearly is a problem.
Yeah, I'm going to stop short of saying that it is a problem that everyone in the F1 paddock struggles and suffers from, because I don't believe that.
I don't think so.
And I don't think that, and I'm not suggesting that's what you're saying. I'm just saying I've seen a lot of people saying, yeah, they need to tear F1 down and because they're all race. Time out.
That's a little
wait
extreme.
a minute, Gungadin. I think the reality of it is having empathy and compassion and doing doing the good thing.
I think Grid Girls is a good example of that. I had several people that reached out to me like, I'm not sure I get why Grid Girls are a problem. Excellent. Let's have a conversation about why I as a woman might have a problem with that or why other women might have a problem about that. I often talk about how there's a difference. So I'm a sociologist by training. So there's a difference between what I may feel. Maybe I'm okay with Grid Girls, but socially on a larger scale, I can see why it's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that the same thing with language is that same way. Like, people will say, well, he called him an N-word. Why can't I do that? Well, it's different. How I might feel about it and how it looks on socially may be very different things. And I may use words with my friends and that's okay, but I don't use them in a larger public forum. So
yeah, right.
I think that you always want, that is, again, the most hopeful thing you can hope for is that there's some dialogue out of it, that there's discussion about it, because that is the only way you're going to build that empathy. And that's the only way we're going to have that conversation. And I may have a conversation with somebody about Grid Girls and they may still go, well, I see why it might be a problem, but I don't think it's a problem. Well, that's fine. But at least we've had some discussion about it and you can see my perspective or you could see where other women are coming from and why maybe that their only representation in a sport shouldn't just be umbrella girls. Maybe that's not the best foot forward for a sport. Now, that also doesn't eliminate that the FIA can be very ham-fisted about everything they do. I can't help that, right? I can't help that they suddenly replaced them all with little kids. I don't think that was the solution either, but I think that maybe that's the best thing that can come out of it. He says this, somebody can say, I don't get it, and then there can be some dialogue.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe Nelson will chat with him. Who knows?
Oh, come on, really? Do you really think that's going to
I don't
happen?
know.
I don't.
I don't know.
He's going to try to kick him and miss. That's what's going to actually happen.
Yeah, right. I don't know. You know, Nelson at his age, he may not give a damn. Who knows? I don't know.
I don't think he ever gave a damn. I don't think
Yeah, I
he
don't
gave
know
a
that
damn
he
when he
did.
was 20. He doesn't now.
He was quite the prankster too. He liked to
Yeah.
play a lot of jokes. He's just he's an interesting personality study.
And
that's
I
for
think
sure.
that people can be, I often, you can be good at this thing and bad at this thing. And so he can be a great race car driver. And we can all be like,
Yeah,
Nelson
he is.
Piquet, great race car driver.
Yeah.
Not my favorite person as a person. Those
Yeah,
both can
yeah.
exist too, right? That
Well, I mean, look, we've talked about this, and this is a complete departure from the topic.
right.
But
As we're
talking
wont to
about,
do.
yeah, we do this from time to time. We got on this rabbit trail about. Now I'm thinking, you mentioned that because I'm just thinking about world champions in general.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about Nelson's comment about Lewis. I'm talking about Nelson as a person, as a driver, and his personality, and that kind of thing. And I was thinking, we've talked about this before. Drivers that have gone on to be world champion in Formula One, and certainly multiple world champion. They're cut from a different cloth.
Yeah.
It's like Seb giving the middles to Multi 21. He's not there to play wet nurse to Mark Webber. Wasn't going to do it. Lewis, not going to do it. Schumacher, not going to do
You
it.
can't. You wouldn't make
know?
it at this level of a
You would not
sport.
make it.
You
Yeah.
would not have survived.
There is a absolute killer instinct in these drivers, and that's what it. I mean, think of like Nico Rosberg. He had to find that in him.
Yeah.
But after he won the championship, that was so not what his personality was naturally that it was unnerving to him. He said, "I'm done. I'm done." He goes, "I couldn't muster the energy that it would take to operate it at that draconian
That
level."
was it.
Right. And Nelson's no different. Mansell, Senna, Prost, they all had that killer instinct to them. But, so that all of them are slightly off anyway.
It's kind of like in hockey, goalies. Goalies are a weird bunch of people, right? And so they are not normal because you couldn't be normal and be a goalie. And so I think there's just a different breed of people that make it to that level. And I'm not one of those people. I would have tuckered out a long time ago. And I just, that's how goalies are. They're just kind of a different breed of people.
It's a bit like drummers and bands. They're just different.
They're different.
They're just different. They're not bad. They're just different.
And you just kind of go,
and stuff.
drummers. Yeah.
Drummers. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But that's the latest on that. Is that
I just hope the answer isn't nothing. I hope the answer isn't nothing. I don't mean to Nelson Piquet. I mean, sure, something should happen to him, but I think that we should continue to have this dialogue. I think it shouldn't just fall off the planet all of a sudden. And
it folds under because Lewis has a commission that he's doing on diversity efforts,
but it's a larger
and those kind of things.
It's a larger social issue, and I think I wish that we talked about this with the re-races run. Congratulations, you put some words on some helmets and you painted the end zone. Good job, NFL. You're right. There's no more racism, right? That's not enough. That's just like window dressing, and so. I hope through something like the Hamilton Commission or that there's some real dialogue because this is baked in our culture. I mean, it becomes so, ingrained. It just feels, people just say things and they don't even realize it because it's what they've been, heard so much in their own existence. And it's like when somebody points it out, one's first reaction is always attack, right? Like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. But then the more you kind of think about it and examine yourself, you're like, why did I say that? So that's what I would want for Nelson Piquet is to go, why is that the word I used? Should I have used another word? And I think the same of Yuri Vips, right? There's no part of that phrase that was meant to be anything but dehumanizing. I mean, it was used as an attacking word. So anyway, Flip plays a lot of Rocket League. So anybody that plays Rocket League, one of the techniques is to blow up the other car because then the other team gets so mad at you that they're so busy getting revenge on you that they're now not watching the goal anymore. And so you are able to use that enforcement as a technique because you make the other person so mad that they're now not playing the game anymore. And I think that people have to think about what they're doing, why they say the things they said, so if he said that to degrade Lewis, why is that the word you went for? And I think that's what we all have to do. We all have to say, I said this thing. And then Todd said, Grace, maybe that's not the best word to use. And I might go, well, Todd, you're right. Maybe that isn't the best word. And maybe I should think about why that is the first word that came to me.
Yeah.
And
well, like I
that's
said,
the only
there's
way
a
you're
lot
gonna
of
get around
words.
that.
If you didn't like Lewis, there's a lot of words you could choose.
Yeah, there's a million of other words that aren't so charged, racially charged,
right,
that you could have used.
Right.
Because I do think, I mean, I know we're now dragging this on, but it's fine. I'm going to take another 5 seconds because when I was talking to Flip, we were discussing about when Yuri Vips said what he said on the live stream, and first of all, it was just like, oh, people are listening to this. First of all, that's why you're doing this, right? You are specifically doing this to up your brand. People are listening to you. This was not an accidental thing. But he also said bitch. And as a woman, I was like, I love how we never talk about that as a demeaning or a downgrading word. We talked about the other words he said, but I would like to have a conversation about that word too. So, because that is also never a word that is used as a positive. You never call somebody that as a way to like lift them up. You're so great, Todd. You're nah. So
unless it's your female dog.
Yeah, I know, but nobody uses it in that. Again, that's the dictionary definition, but nobody uses it in that term, right?
Right.
It is only used as a way to say, "Oh my God, you're so terrible. You're like a woman," and we never talk about that. But as a woman, I would like to have some conversation about that somewhere. That's my own podcast somewhere else. But I think in addition to the N word, the B word also should get some attention because that is never meant as anything but saying you're less than.
No, it is. It's a derogatory comment, and it is. And just everybody needs to grow the hell up.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you be more creative. It's the least thing you could do.
Here, come on.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, let's go. Let's talk about shall we move
I like this
from that?
180. I don't know what the right term is, but this is totally like a U-turn. But
it is a U-turn.
Let's go ahead.
Let's talk about a German, shall we? A German named Sebastian Vettel. So, interesting story. I was reading this week about the whole convincing Sebastian Vettel to stay at Aston Martin. Sebastian Vettel's contract is, I know, just that in and of itself is kind of interesting.
This could be your no shit headline. Like,
yeah,
okay.
I know. It's true. So Sebastian Vettel's contract's up at the end of the year. According to Aston Martin, they need to show some significant gains in the car development in order to keep Seb for another year or two. And here's what they said. Quote, but we have always said that we want to show him that we can improve the car. Barcelona was the first step. And I'd like to show him another step, and then we can talk. Maybe his desire to do it is maybe a little bit better, end quote. Okay. Now, this could be the case where Seb is a free agent at the end of the year, and Aston wants to retain the services of a four-time champ for their program. But I'm wondering if there isn't more to the issue than that. I'm wondering if this is less to do with Seb going to another team and more just about Seb simply saying, I'm going to retire. Yeah, I'm done, right? Because if I'm honest, I'm not sure there's another spot for him.
There isn't another team for him to go to, right?
Right. So I don't think the debate is, oh my gosh, we got to keep him because we're going to lose him to a competitor. I don't think that's the debate. Look, I'm just being blunt. And I don't mean anything untoward, but I don't think Seb and Aston have really achieved quite what they were hoping for.
They haven't achieved anything. So yes, that would not be what he was hoping for.
Right. And let's be fair, there's nothing easy about F1. Okay.
No.
And so that's the issue. So if Lawrence was expecting the Seb Aston package to deliver wins this season, he may have had unrealistic expectations from the beginning. Right. Mm-hmm. But what about Seb's part in this? I mean, sure, the team feel they need to show him they can make a development progress to keep him interested, to keep him at the team. But would you be folded in half trying desperately to keep Seb at the team if you were Mike Cracker Lawrence? I mean, it's just a question. The team has a tremendous amount of work to do at this point. And at this point, the driver is perhaps important, But as we've seen from Seb, it hasn't made all the difference in the results, right? So
Yeah.
that we've talked about this in other teams in the past. Haas was a good example where at this point,
Right.
the driver's the least of your issue.
That is correct. That is
you've
correct.
got major car issues you got to solve, right? And so we've talked about that.
Right.
And there's been times when Lance has performed better than Seb. So given the hand that they're dealt, is securing an expensive driver their best bet, or would they be better off finding someone else for less? Having said that, a driver that can assist in the development of a car is critical.
Yeah, worth their weight in gold. Yeah.
Exactly. And the team has said on many occasions that this is one of the strongest skill sets of Seb.
Yeah.
And that's why they want to retain him. And that may be true if you consider Red Bull and his time at Red Bull.
Yeah.
I can't say that his time at Ferrari, that relationship was a resounding success for either Ferrari or Seb. But to be fair, and I felt bad for Seb because I really felt like that should have paid dividends at Ferrari, but Ferrari just went through all of that, top level. I mean, they just culled the herd over there, right?
Like,
there was so much change.
You almost want to take that Vettel and put him in this team now.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think he would be doing better. It was just really bad timing. Whereas Lewis going to Mercedes is perfect timing, right?
Correct.
So yeah, I don't know. On the other side of the equation, who else is out there? Who's a veteran who can develop a car? I mean, I think Alex Albon would be good to hire for them, but he doesn't have Seb's granular knowledge of car development, right? So in my mind, the real challenge here is Lance, because
100%.
if he isn't able to help develop a car at this point, he may not be the hot shoe the team actually needs if the car comes alive, right?
Right. Because if you're gonna if you're gonna say, Seb, we're gonna write off his Sunday performance because we get something out of him Monday through Friday.
Yeah, right.
So we're not worried about his Sunday because we got Monday through Friday. Then Lance has to deliver on Sunday.
Yes.
And he's not delivering on Sunday. So now we're in quite a quandary here.
Yeah. It kind of reminds a little bit of the Kevin and Mick at Haas sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Kevin, the veteran, trying to help, develop the car. Mick, struggling. It's kind of similar. Then there's Seb's goals. I mean, does he want to stay in F1 at this point? I mean, he seems to, kind of like Lewis, he's found a lot of other interests outside of the sport, and he also has a family to look after. Yeah. So does he want to continue the rat race or not? I don't know. But it just struck me because the article is all very much written in kind of this voice of quiet desperation from Aston. Oh my gosh, we have to improve the car. We're going to lose Seb. I'm thinking,
totally.
Okay.
It sounds like, the significant other that's been cheating and just keeps going, baby, but I bought you roses. But baby, I took you out to dinner. How about you stop cheating? And then maybe, baby, we can talk about this, right? So, how about instead of just wait until summer break, we're going to bring you something very nice, right? Why don't you just try to get it together? And it is not Larry's first year with the team either. So
no. But it's like that thing with Seb. It's like, we got to do whatever. We got to develop the car because we're going to lose Seb. Okay, maybe Seb's tired of it. Maybe he doesn't want to do it anymore.
And especially because if he really wants to carry, he's been very big on the environmental message. He's been very big on LGBTQ. He has that platform, even if he's not in Formula One, right? He has world championships after his name. He will always be a big deal. Just like
same for Lewis.
Michael Jordan is still a big deal, even though he's not playing basketball anymore, right? So you still have, you don't have to be a current driver at Vettel's skill level. Now you would be if you were at, Latifi. You need to be in the sport to get any cachet, but not once you have some world champions behind your name. You could go on your, whatever your causes are, and you can continue to bring those, important messages forward and aiming for solutions and bringing money to your causes without still having to race. And so, plus he's not a spring chicken anymore in a sport where spring chickenness is rewarded. So
it's a young person's sport, Grace.
I mean, everything is a young person's sport, but F1 is especially a young person's sport.
For sure. So I don't know. Watch the space. My hunch is they may. He may do. I don't know if he'll do a 2-year deal. Maybe another year.
I do think they lose out on his PR-ness. Like, we often talk about how George Russell is like a PR dream, right? Like, he just, even all his years at Williams, he never said a negative thing about Williams, but you also knew he wasn't happy all the time with Williams either, right? He's just like a PR dream. I think Vettel definitely, because Lance Stroll has like no personality or chemistry at all, right? And
yeah, it's kind of tough.
People be like that, and that's fine. But in a sport where you have to have sponsorship dollars in order to race, because that's part of how you pay for the team, him just being like, he's always, to me, he sounds like, a teenager. How was school today? Great. What's your favorite class? I don't know, recess.
Yeah.
What do you want to do for dinner? I don't know. Right? Like, that's Lance Stroll. Whereas Vettel is like, I mean, when they do their unbox videos, it's always like Vettel is just like this gregarious guy, and he's really funny, and he's doing things, and Lance is just like, okay.
Well, Vettel's done a hell of a lot of media in his day,
but Lance is not new to this either. He's not new to the sport.
No,
so
it's right.
I think if I was a team, not only do I want him from Monday to Friday because he helps develop the car, but Monday through Friday because he's the face of my team. And if Larry is going to have to put his son out there to do it, oh man, they're in trouble, because they're going to be like, what did you think about the race this weekend? Good.
Yeah,
great.
I know.
I can't work with that. Nobody's going to put money into our car if that's your answer.
I know. He's kind of like,
I want it now. What's the matter with those twats down there?
Yeah, he just doesn't have that warm fuzzy.
He doesn't.
Maybe he does. Maybe he does. On an individual one-to-one basis. But
I just think, and that may, again, it's just his personality, and that's fine. And pretty much every other occupation. I mean, I work with a lot of introverts, and they kind of are like that, and that's fine. But I work in a field where it's fine, because their statisticians are all introverted like that. You're in a very public-facing spot, so you better learn how to fake it if that is not how your personality is, and hire somebody to, get you into a place where you can answer. Go to the George Russell finishing school, because George is never seems a step wrong when it comes to the PR media bit. So,
no, it's true. I mean, it stuns people to learn that I'm an introvert.
Yeah, I think that's
because the majority of my day I have to, I can out extrovert extroverts, but it sucks the life out of me, right, to do it, right?
I need 3 days to recover.
I do. I need downtime to recharge, right? So I don't have a problem with it, but it's also why I'm not very good at just shameless self-promotion and those kind of things that you would do, because this is not my nature. But I think. And Lance, very, like you said, he may be an introvert in that sense, but he's in a sport where you've got to extrovert it, right? And it's difficult. And speaking of Lance, I was doing the notes, and then I stumbled into this later as I was looking at news stories. So speaking of Lance, I questioned previously in the previous story about he's kind of the question mark for me there. Right. Not so much Seb. When it comes to Seb, does Seb want to continue doing it? And if he does, I'm sure Aston will take him.
Yeah.
And to your point, Grace, he's keep in mind, folks, if you're newer to Formula One, it wasn't very long ago that Seb, every sport needs its hero and its villain. And Seb was its villain.
Yeah,
he was
for sure.
Absolutely the villain. When he first came in to the sport with Red Bull, he was a charming young kid. He loved British humor, Monty Python, and the British press adored him, and he was great, and he was charming and all that. But then when he started competing and winning all the titles, 4 years in a row with Red Bull, and then the media started really dragging on him, and then he was a Ferrari and banging wheels with Lewis, and he was the villain.
Think about the children.
Yeah, but he got to Aston Martin, and he's it's the chill, Seb, right? And everybody kind of likes him.
As one of those people that, I was just going to say, if you go back like 100 podcasts, I was not a Vettel fan at all. No. So I think that.
Yeah, it's true. So, so it makes sense to keep it. But Lance is the question mark, and I'm not alone in asking that because apparently, I kind of, I'm questioning his tenure at Aston Martin if the team really want to move to the top. And it seems that our friend Johnny Herbert has a similar thought. Johnny said this, quote, Lance has had a bit of a difficult time of late. He said, I sometimes think there's a certain time that if it doesn't quite happen, Lawrence has got to go, son, I've given you a chance. It isn't working out. and I've got to do what's right for the team. I think there will be a point that's going to happen. I don't exactly know when that will be, but it's down to Lance actually to do the job that he needs to do and consistency to do the job. At the moment, it's a little bit scrappy.
Oh,
Yeah. So
that's nice. That's a nice
Yeah.
way of putting it.
yeah, yeah. So, Lance has said he's not comfortable in the car. He's struggling, and I get
I
all
mean-
that stuff, but you got to wonder, when is that time?
So I do think Lance has improved.
He is.
You know, I mean, I do think that a lot of the criticism, he is improving, but not enough and not fast enough. And so at some point you have, I mean, how long? 5 years? How long has he been with that team? It's more than
3?
that. 3 years? Is it only been
Maybe?
3? I don't know.
3 or 4.
But
Yeah.
enough. Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll say less than 5, more than 3. And I would say that is enough that I have a good portfolio, a good sense of what you are going to bring to this team.
Yeah.
And it's not enough. And
Yeah.
so, unless you have somebody else that balances that out that can bring it and is enough, you got to go.
You're right. He has improved, because there's race reviews that Paul and I have done
Yeah.
where we've absolutely praised Lance.
Yeah,
Did
I
a
mean,
fabulous job, and especially, I'll tell you where he has been good in the past is either in wet conditions or changeable conditions. He actually has got a good sense of the car and has done really well in those conditions. And so this last race is a little bit of a head scratcher for me, but yeah, I don't know what it is.
It's just like, but I don't think it's enough. So I think I can,
Yeah.
I think where I stand, if I was Mike Crack or if I was, Lawrence Stroll, I can say, yes, you've improved. You are doing better. But, like I can take as many painting lessons as I want. I'm never going to be a master painter. At some point,
Right.
the amount of talent I have just isn't enough. And
not everybody can be
improve.
Bob Ross.
Right. It's just never going to be at that level. And so I think
He's a
that
happy little driver. We're just paying a little happy driver down there.
that would be so. I'm so happy little driver. Yeah.
Happy
So
little
I
driver.
think, especially if Vettel goes, you also wouldn't want 2 new drivers. That's not usually a good thing. So I think they really have to figure out what they're going to do there. And I think it would be really. I don't know. I don't know what Mike was thinking.
I think if you retain Seb,
Then you can get for sure.
well, but even if you change Seb, you got to make some serious decisions, because that may be only a 1-year deal. You got to figure out what the next move, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they've already thought about this. But
I hope so.
what is the move? Because you can't part company with Seb and put in a rookie,
Right.
and feel like you're going to really charge to the sharp end of the grid. Not with Lance.
No.
So you got to figure out on the development side because remember, bringing Seb in was to help coach Lance too. Right.
Right.
So either that's the Sebness is going to rub off on Lance,
Or it's not.
or it's not, and if it's not, you've got to make wholesale changes across the board. So,
And they have, I mean, and I think when we're talking like the team has to improve, like, again, I'm not expecting them to be in the front 3, right? I'm not expecting them to be taking it to Ferrari, but they're not even taking it to Alpine. So, and they can't be happy about that. And for
Yeah,
sure
and
Larry's not.
and I think at some point, I think Johnny's right. I mean, he's ascribing words to Lawrence as saying, giving you a chance, not quite working out. And ultimately, I got to do what's best for the team.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, I don't get the impression that Lawrence gives a damn what the team thinks or not. I mean,
Right.
he doesn't strike me as, it's like saying, okay, well, you got to do what's best for the team. I kind of feel like, well, his point is, I'm paying for everything. And you're kind of like, okay, Thulsa Doom, calm down.
There can only be one Pope.
Yeah, right. And I get it, but I don't know. Yeah, there's some issues there. They got to sort that out. That's all I'm saying.
I just hope that when Mike Crack is done with that team, he writes a tell-all biography. That's all I really want. Like,
Lawrence and me.
or yeah, right. or just instead of Drive to Survive, they should just have a spin-off show that is just Drive to Survive, but only at Aston Martin, right? Like, I just think that team,
Yeah,
it's such a
a spin-off series called Larry Bomb, or who knows,
something. I don't know. I just think
I'm not the literary guy. You guys figure that out, but that would be good.
something. I think that would be my first spin-off. I think that would be a lot of
Yeah.
fun, is just to kind of see 100% behind the scenes, because I mean, even what we did see with Drive to Survive last season was just well, this is This is not good.
Can you imagine, truth be known, can you imagine what Seb thinks of Lawrence?
Oh, I can't imagine that they get along.
I think Seb's got to look at him and say, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, there's probably like it's like again when you have a teenager and you're like your eyes are gonna freeze like that. Like
Yeah.
Seb, could you roll your eyes a little louder? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
Larry heard it across the table, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine. And
I
he was
can't
at
either.
Ferrari, which is
Yeah.
also like
Talk about some,
Ferrari.
very dominant personalities. Yeah. that
right.
would be-
And so it's like
yeah.
I think that maybe that's the tell-all I really want because Vettel was at Red Bull, which is a lot of personality, Ferrari, which is a lot of personality, Aston Martin, which is a lot of, but all very
Yeah.
different
Yeah, they are.
kinds of personalities. I think
Yeah.
that's maybe what I really want.
When I Spoke Italian by Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, something. I just like what like what is your life that you've been on that you've been at these teams and especially because he was at Red Bull when it was like the fun team and then it became the successful team and less fun.
Yeah, they had to grow up.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so I think that would be interesting. And then Red Bull with all its like
Yeah.
I don't know. I just do a bunch of arm
That's
waves.
just it. That's just it, Seb. Just go ahead and retire and write a book. That's what we really want.
Yeah, I want that. And then we'll all go save the environment. I think those are good life missions, right? Give us both spill the tea and we'll save the bees. I think
it's a
this is what we're
perfect
doing.
segue, Grace, because we're going to talk about saving the environment.
Very
F1's
good.
new technology. I thought this is kind of, this is kind of cool in the cool technology
that's
category, right? So F1 announced that it will be using a synthetic fuel to be introduced with the new engines, which are slated to come into 2026. I was reading an article by BBC's Andrew Benson, and he stated this. He said Formula One has developed a synthetic sustainable fuel to be introduced in 2026 as part of its program to be net zero carbon by 2030. Synthetic fuels are manufactured by an industrial process and emit in their burning only the carbon that was taken out of the atmosphere to make them. The fuel can be used in standard internal combustion engines and could help the car industry to decarbonize. In F1, it will be used in the new generation hybrid engines from 2026. These will increase the proportion of power produced by the hybrid part of the engine compared to the already super efficient motors used since 2014. I was reading that. I was like, that's kind of interesting to see. I'll be interested to see how efficient these new engines are compared to the existing ones today, which are like 50%, which is off the charts.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see how efficient these are. And I do think it focuses on one of the main challenges really in you could say the road car industry or racing, but it's really the challenges between creating energy on demand or storing energy for use, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a difficult task. Anytime you convert energy, you experience loss and heat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's tough. And it's a difficult. I mean, just ask anyone who has a mouse for the computer that burns through double A's like they're candy, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay, look, the reality of it is we're better at creating energy than we are storing it.
Yeah, storing it has always been the problem.
Storing's always been a challenge, right? So the key here will be the sentence that Andrew mentioned that said, or at least suggested, that the new hybrid engine will rely heavier on the hybrid portion than the motor portion of the engine. The big question I have is, ultimately, when you look at this kind of technology, it's one thing to say we have a current hybrid engine that runs 50% efficiency, and in 2026 we're going to move from the current fuel to total synthetic fuel to be running these engines. Okay, great. That's kind of an interesting concept because we already have these engines.
Right.
But if it's a new engine design completely, my one concern is it going to be affordable, or are we going to experience the same outrageous costs of new engine development, which customer teams foot the bill for and they can barely afford, right? I just don't want to get back into that situation we were in 2013, 2014, when we're all walking around, mouth agape at the incredible technology that Mercedes was able to create with the hybrid engine, but it cost a galactic fortune to freaking make, and they cast off that R&D costs to customers who are paying $40 million a year for engine play. This is ridiculous. And it bankrupted 3 team and put 3 more on life support. So I don't want to get to that point again, and I hope we don't. And I hope that whatever the design they use and the usage of synthetic fuels will be a much more affordable and achievable power unit supply for smaller teams, I hope.
I mean, it's going to have to be. I think that, I mean, first of all, that's what you always want. You know, I think we would want a more efficient engine, a better, more efficient burning fuel, and not to cost a gazillion dollars, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, it's kind of like that. You know, you can only have, you know, one of 3 things. You know,
right.
On time, under budget.
Yeah.
I never remember what the third one is, right? And
you can have it cheap, you can have it good, or you can have it quick.
See, there you go. So it's the same kind of thing, right? Like, so we really want, the idea is to have all 3, right? We really want it to be an efficient fuel, an efficient engine, and not cost so much that nobody can afford it, right? Because if nobody can afford it, then what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's before you even get to anything outside of Formula One. Like, if you can't afford it in Formula One, well, then no, the rest of us can afford it, right? Like, if, you know.
Well, and if we're going to continue with budget caps, then you can't drain the whole budget cap on, you know, because my Mercedes engine supply cost me $40 million.
Because that also, I can't just put some wheels on an engine and see how it goes.
Yeah,
right? I got to know the rest of the car too, right?
Yeah.
So
apparently, I need some sort of chassis,
whatever
that is,
and some floor thing. Yeah. Exactly, and some wheels, and some tires. But yeah, no, exactly. So it has to be, the whole package has to be affordable, in order to be successful. So I agree. I think this is super interesting. I think this has great road relevancy, right? Isn't that always the like?
Yeah.
The FIA word.
Well,
this
of the actually does. Yeah, this actually.
So
probably
I
does.
think that would be. I think that would be great. And I think that is a good use of Formula One to create a technology that would benefit the rest of us as well. And it just can't be so expensive that nobody can use it, or you end up with 3 teams.
Yeah, and I know that that F1, their technical group and the FIA, I know they're working with the current engine manufacturers, trying to determine what the future formula is. So I know they're working with them. And, look, there's a lot of smart people in those groups, and much smarter than I am. So you have to think that they've already said, all right, look, let's just kick this $140 million budget can down the road and say we have a budget cap. You're telling me that it's going to cost X amount of dollars to develop in R&D and overhead to develop this new engine. How much of that, can be as cast off as a customer. Your customer supplies can't pay more than $15 million a year for an engine supply because of the budget cap. So we all need to be realistic and work within this fence. This is the fence that we have to work within, and we all need to work within that. And you can't have Ferrari or Mercedes or Renault coming back and saying, well, it's going to cost us $170 million to develop this new engine, or $500 million to develop this new engine, and we're going to charge $50 million a year. No, that dog don't hunt. So hopefully they'll figure it out. Speaking of budget caps, gosh, we are like the Segway kings tonight, are we not? It's amazing. So speaking of that, I want to talk about the budget cap. And cost caps in development. So the debate over increasing the cost cap rages on within F1. And while most read about this conversation and this effort to increase the budget caps, most people read it and it's usually coming out of Red Bull, right? But it's interesting to see Jonathan Noble's piece over at Motorsport concerning McLaren's pause on development. Now, this is what I find interesting. So I was reading Mr. Noble's article over there, and Andreas Seidel at McLaren says, due to the cost cap uncertainty, it's making it hard to develop their car. And here's what Jonathan quoted him as saying, quote, hopefully it's not just us who had to pull the handbrake in terms of further developments due to the restrictions we're having mainly from the cost cap side. He went on to say, but there's also the restrictions you have nowadays with further limited wind tunnel time. So you really need to be careful with how you use your wind tunnel time. The main thing at the moment is still trying to unlock, still trying to unlock small gains is basically what he's saying.
Okay.
So the question at this point might be, are some teams right in suggesting that while the cost caps were designed with anticipated cost increases for 2022, no one could have accounted for the dramatic impact inflation and the rising cost of everything, right? They wouldn't have foreseen that.
Right.
Also, are we seeing F1 grind to a stagnant halt on in-season development, meaning as they run now might be pretty much how they're going to be running to the end of the season.
Right.
And if that's the case, it's a rhetorical question, but is that okay with everyone? Right? When we brought the cost cap in and the costs now have increased exponentially, you've got teams like McLaren that have pulled the brake up on any further development. That means that no team is going to be able to develop their way out of a hole, or, like last year, Mercedes most likely could not have mounted that comeback that they did in the year. And this year's restrictions and their limitations this year doesn't bode well. If they're already bouncing up against the ceiling of the cost cap and no more development can happen, then you're pretty much where we are now is how the season's going to finish. And is our fans okay with that? I'm asking.
Yeah.
So that's what I think anyway. I always felt that creating and policing a cost budget was going to be a very difficult thing.
Well, and they haven't even started the policing part of it yet, right?
Yeah, right.
I think that I guess we tightened it too tight, right? Like, maybe that's just the adjustment. Like, I gave you a $5 allowance and you really need $10 in order to survive. Right. Like, I'm just not giving you enough lunch money.
Yeah.
You're just eating nachos for lunch because that's all I'm giving you money for. So maybe there is, and again, right, I guess I can see that I just don't want to agree with Christian Horner is what I feel like I'm now slowly finding myself like, well,
I kind of agree with him, but
those are things Christian Horner said. But anyway, which I always question whenever I find myself going, well, maybe you have a point, Christian. That never can be a good thing, but in my opinion. But I maybe like everything else. So we often talk about when you have a rookie driver, it takes them more than one season. Like, we can't look at, Joe and be like, well, you suck, you're out, right? Like, it's his first year. He's improving. It's going to take him a little bit to get used to his seat, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's how the cost cap is going to go too, right? Like, we put it in its first year and it's kind of its rookie year and we kind of like, this isn't going to quite work. And I think that's unfortunate. I don't think anybody's okay with,
no, I think everyone at this point is kind of like,
not good enough, damn it, not good enough.
But I think it's hard because I think to myself as a Formula One fan, what would be ideal is that anybody could win. Any given Sunday, anybody could win. That's not true in any sport, right?
No.
That's certainly not true in Formula One. Williams is never going to just be Ferrari, right?
No.
That's not going to happen. And so then do we just look at the three, like we look at the front teams, the middle teams, and the back teams, and we want to see some movement within the reason of those 6 teams, so that you get some front mid team and you get some mid team back teams, but you're not going to see back team front team switching. What is that goal? Because you really want to give Haas and Williams and Alfa Romeo like a leg up. You want to give them enough, whether that's wind tunnel time or more money. You want something so they can feel like they see some upward movement, but not so much on the front teams that that we're going to get to summer break and we're not going to see any development. So
it was a concern I had going into this cost cap.
Yeah, I think so.
It's sort of materializing to where come mid-season, everybody's kind of at their budgets, and maybe they'll be better at it next year. I had someone tell me, well, maybe what they ought to do is start out with 100 million or 140 million, or maybe make it lower, start off with a cost cap of 120 million, and then come mid-season, the bottom 5 teams get an additional 20 million to develop.
Right,
and, it's like, okay, well, maybe, but then, so I don't know.
I think much like the first story, what I'm hoping is that like Ross Braun and his friends, his merry band of friends, like break out some sticky notes and figure this out, right?
Right.
Like,
Ross and Friar Tuck and the merry band over there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fox with the guitar.
Yeah.
I think that
The fox with the
this became
guitar.
Robin Hood all of a sudden, right? Like, I don't know. But anyway, I think that they need to like do some postmortem. Like, we tried this thing. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Here's what our goals were. Here's how we could fix it. Here's where we were. It's the same thing you would do with a rookie driver. And I think it's the same thing we all do in our daily lives with projects, right? I think that, there are no failures. There's only misses there's only, success and almost success, right? So I think we can all agree this is an almost success.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to keep working on it. It's not a success.
Yeah. I'm just worried that I'm trying to prevent this becoming a dumpster fire during the season.
Yeah, I think that's a problem.
And waiting to the end of the season after we endured half a season, which turned into a dumpster fire because nobody could do anything or afford it. And then all of a sudden we're saying, okay, well, now we're going to read the epitaph and then we're going to figure out what to tweak. And it's kind of like, I see it coming already. Yeah, kind of see it already coming. So maybe we ought to tweak it now to prevent this season for being a coaching moment,
I mean, I agree. I just think that's hard
know.
to do.
I know.
Justly, fairly. I don't know.
I know it is,
right? Like,
well, I mean, look, here's Toto's. He's got himself up a creek with, up the S Creek with no paddles with his car, and he's trying to change the whole dang regulations for everybody.
And meanwhile, Christian Horner is just like floating by, going, neener, look at all my oars.
Hey,
ooh, yeah.
Boy, that Mercedes, zero pod, huh? Nice.
Look at this. Yeah, that's right. Look at my carbon fiber oars. Ooh, I got oars to spare. You need some? Yeah. Too bad.
This oar's called Adrian.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Ferrari's like, I have an oar and I threw it in the water because I have no strategy at all.
Yeah, Mercedes around. Did this thing come with ours? Yeah.
Ferrari had him, but they left him on the shore or something.
Quick,
right?
Get on there, blow this thing up. Try to blow the raft up, It's crazy. Lewis is bailing water. It's crazy over there.
I like the idea of Ferrari just being like, I thought you were bringing the oars. I thought you were bringing the ours. We don't have any oars.
Yeah, we don't have any oars. We got one oar.
Maybe.
That's crazy.
One little oar. But yes,
it's a little oar.
I think I agree that something needs to happen. I think it's always hard when you do it mid-season. Nobody's going to be happy, and everybody's going to be out loud with what they want. So,
well, there you go. What you see from McLaren, that's pretty much what you're going to get. So enjoy it for the rest of the season. Sorry, Grace. I hate to say that.
That's terrible.
I know. It's terrible.
Can I just get a win for Carlos? Can I at least get that happiness out?
Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? All right. Let's do some Albin's Cat, shall we? All right, Grace. What do you got?
So, we had some racing. So Canada, I thought there was, I think the weather was I felt like everybody was at Canada but me. Like, I went a couple years ago and it was just like everybody was there. I was like, when I was here, nobody was here, but now everybody's there. But I do think that a lot of people talked about how great Canada is. I was like, yes, it is great because you are so close to Montreal. You can take the subway. I wish every track was like Montreal and that the town really like ups its game. I think that is so true. I've been to other towns. I've even been to Indianapolis for the Indianapolis 500, and it is not like Montreal is for an F1 weekend. That town just really like, they are the George Russell of how to have a race weekend. So if you're Miami or Las Vegas, I hope you went to Montreal so that you could see how to really do this, and it was a lot of fun. But I think my favorite takeaway since the last time I was on was literally when Toto Wolff, friend of the podcast, referred to the car as a shit box. It's a shit box. I was like, that was great. I only wish he could have had, the Niki Lauda soundboard. I'm so sorry, Lewis. The car it's a shit box, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That would have been great. I just was like,
that was good.
Man, I'm glad Nikki somewhere is like, I told you people that this car is a shit box. None of you listened to me, and here you are now. Good luck.
Good luck.
I told you.
Way to go.
Yeah. So that was my favorite. I love that he used that actual phrase.
I know, that actual phrase. It was great. I saw
Yeah.
that too. All right, time for my no shit headlines. I think maybe you'll enjoy some of these.
I always do.
Yeah, the first one is, are you ready for this? The first headline, and just if you're newer to the podcast, so each week I go through and I look at, and it usually comes with the British rags, to be honest.
Oh,
and
yeah, they're
I
great.
go through all the British rags and read all the headlines, and some of these are hilarious. So, I take it in the spirits intended, you British F1 press.
They know.
I'm
I
just
mean, they're
taking the
well
piss.
aware that
Yeah.
they have a different relationship with facts than other people do.
Yeah, some do. All right. So the first one is Christian Horner admits Michael Massey made a mistake as Max Verstappen beat Lewis Hamilton. Ha!
What?
All this time later.
Yeah, right. Like 8 months later, now he's like, oh.
Yeah. He said, okay, so to unpack that a little
Yeah.
bit, I did read the story. Sometimes I don't. I did read the story. He said, his only mistake is he didn't unlap all the cars. There was like 3 other cars that need to be unlapped. That's what he said. Anyway, this one not.
I was gonna say, but I like the way the headline is better.
Yeah.
Like it makes it sound like Christian Horner's like, yeah, we should give that trophy to Lewis. That's how
Yeah,
this reads, right?
exactly.
Which we all know is not what he said.
It's
There's
not
no
what he
way.
said. Right. It's
No
kind of like
way.
he admits Michael Massey made a mistake, and he's offered up an act of contrition, and they've denounced the world. It's no.
That is not what he said.
Okay, so the next one, these next two are kind of funny, and not trying to be too funny here, but Lando Norris enjoying some comforts at British Grand Prix and will be cheered on by stunning girlfriend Luisina Oliveira. So this was an opportunity for the publication to post a bunch of skin, shots of his girlfriend and, skimpy clothing. So there you go. Lando Norris enjoying the comforts of a British Grand Prix.
I'm not okay with this headline.
Yeah, I know. It's a little weird. And then it gets a little weirder. The next one is
Great.
F1 legend Jenson Button's wife Brittany Ward shows off perfect figure in lingerie.
What is this head? What?
All these pictures of JB's wife in lingerie. It's like, okay, but if that wasn't funny enough, I love me some JB on the Sky Sports. I think he's awesome. I think
I'm a
JB 's
fan.
awesome. JB is one dude I'd love to sit and drink beer with, and I love JB. He's awesome.
Yeah.
But I did find the liberal use of the word F1 legend.
Well, I mean, there is that too, right? Like after we get through the fact
Yeah.
that it's talking about his wife in lingerie, like
Right.
legend. Come on. I feel like I often joke, right? Like, yeah, that championship's in quotes, right? Like,
Yeah.
champion.
Yeah. I mean, JB's awesome. I mean, there's what's not to like? He's a great driver. but-
Longtime listeners of the show know how I feel about Jenson
Yeah,
Button.
we know how you
And I
feel
still
about it.
think that championship should have some
Yeah.
quotes around it.
Yeah, I'm a much bigger fan than you. Yeah, even though he looked at me weird in Austin when I saw him on the street with his then wife, and they were holding hands across the street, and I said, "Hey, JB, how you doing?" He just looked at me strange, and and his wife looked at me, and they just kept going. It's like, don't look him in the eye, and it'll it threatens him. Whatever you do, stay away from that man.
Like he's a cat.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
Did he yell at you, "It's tomorrow"? Because that
No,
would be
he
great.
didn't. No, he didn't. So just for the record, I've been snubbed by JB and Christian Horner, and I like
Man.
both of them. So it's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
I mean that's not.
Yeah. So
I
it's all right. If it's seriously, if I was there and I saw me coming at, I'd snub me. I would.
Wait, so you saw him at Austin? I assume during the Grand Prix, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So he seemed surprised that somebody recognized
Yes.
him.
Yeah. They didn't even say hi. I mean, I literally was 3 feet from
Yeah,
him.
like,
they're
hey,
walking
man.
towards me, and
Yeah.
he walked by, and I said, "Hey, JB." And he just looked at me, stern look, and had his wife. Now, look, he ends up getting divorced. Maybe they were in an argument. Who knows?
Maybe.
You never
I-
know what battles people are going through.
It's right. We're all icebergs. I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just merely saying it's not like, I mean, he lives in LA. It's not like you're on some street I don't know who stands on street corners in LA, but it's not like you were standing on some street corner in
No.
LA.
No.
And we're like, hey, Jensen, how's it going? He
Yeah.
might then give you a look like, why do you know who I am? Right.
Right.
Because nobody knows who anybody is in Formula One in this country. I get that. But you're at a Formula One
Right.
weekend. Everybody's in Austin for the race. They know who he is. He's on
Well,
TV. He's
It's
a
my
champion.
fault. Ultimately, it's my fault
not.
because what I should have said is, "Hey, F1 legend." That's what I should have said.
Which is much better than usually. I'm like, the person's walking this way and I'm walking this way and I'm just like, oh shit, oh god, that, oh
yeah.
damn it, like I missed my moment, right? Because by the time it like hit me who that was, and I was speechless and I just pointed in, I was just weird, and that's just who I am. But I think that
I don't. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm one of those people like in the medieval times that, the women and children would run screaming when they see me. I have no idea, but I could spend an entire podcast telling you times that I've bumped into quote famous people. It's like the time I'm in DC up there, you and I ate dinner, but I was staying at this hotel by the Capitol, and I go in. I had walked down the street and I came back and I was going through the lobby and I was walking and there's a guy walking towards me and he's got like some dudes in suits with him and he's walking towards me and he's just staring at me the whole time I walk by, and I'm watching him and we just watch each other and he just goes by and I kind of stop and he kind of looks around over his shoulder. It was Donald Rumsfeld. It's like, what did you think I was going to tackle you? I mean, that was so weird, right?
Yeah.
It was just strange, And then I had the Horner thing, the JB thing.
Well, and especially because if you see somebody with a lot of people around them like that, even if you don't reckon, it's still I mean, even in DC, it still would be weird. I still think I'd be like, why is that guy got all those guys? Oh, wait, I missed my moment.
I was in New York. I was at this studio place that has all these meeting rooms and all that stuff, and I'm standing there. And so I went to the bathroom and I was coming back down the hallway and the elevator doors open and Johnny Depp comes in, and he looks like he could have been living on the street, and he comes in, he's a little dude too. Yeah. And he looks up at me and I look at him and he just kind of like it's like, why is everybody staring at me? So then there's that story.
I don't know.
The other story, I'm in LA and I'm walking to go into the airport while Jack Black and his entourage are walking out. Same thing. He comes walking out. He's looking at me, and I go, "Hey, Jack," and he turns around like, do I? And so I don't know. I mean, surely these are celebrities. They have fans say hi to them all the time. Why is it when I say hi to them, they act like?
I just want to say, weird. Not that you're asking for my in defense, but in defense, I've met you in real life. I don't know why people would have some adverse reaction.
I don't know. It's weird. Yeah.
I don't know. I remember being in, we went to the MotoGP race in Indianapolis. Now, as you all know, I am not the biggest fan of Indianapolis because there's nothing to do in Indianapolis. And so
St. Elmo's, but that's it.
That's it. So you're just like we're just walking around St. Elmo's. We're just walking around Indianapolis. And that's all the MotoGP drivers are doing too, right? And it's like, that was Jorge Lorenzo and like 6 women following him, right?
Right.
And I just remember on social media, he was like, I'm trying to find sushi. I'm like, sir, you're in Indianapolis. I don't think they have sushi here. And if they do, I wouldn't eat it. All right. Like, I think steak is the way to go. You're in the Midwest. I'm just saying, and then I remember Nikki Hayden posted something. I'm like, I was just on that corner, right? Because again, there's nowhere to go. Yeah. That was the weirdest thing ever. And but yeah, we saw a lot. I saw lots of MotoGP riders that weekend because it was just and it's still kind of weird because you're just I just keep telling myself, they're just people. They're just people. They're just people, right?
Right.
But there's still some part of you that's just like, oh my God, that's so-and-so.
I don't want to sound like everybody, because Mark Genet, delightful. Seb was delightful. Felipe Massa, charming guy.
For sure.
Charlie Whiting, a delightful guy. Right. Many of them that I've met. I said hi to Schumacher. He said hi. They're delightful people, but there are those odd moments,
Yeah, I think it is. And I think when we went to Comic-Con in 2013, Flip and I, we ate breakfast across the little hotel breakfast room from Stan Lee. And that was
oh, wow.
Flip was totally And he's freaking out, and I'm like, he's just a human. He's just a human. Calm down. But that's what you have to tell yourself, because you certainly can't be like, oh my god, hey Stanley, how's it going? And you sound like the comic book guy, or no, the school bus driver or somebody from The Simpsons. No, who was the nerdy guy, right?
Yeah, right.
Not the school bus driver. He was the cool guy.
Sorry,
but anyway,
sir.
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, Stanley, you're my favorite. But I love that it was. I mean, I guess that's always the thing. Like Stanley was exactly how Stan Lee was in the movies, exactly how you see him, khakis from head to toe. It was just like,
that's funny. Oh, now you're muted.
oh,
Now I can hear you. Sorry.
oh, it must. Anyway, Flip just told me that the answer is Ralph Wiggum is who I'm thinking.
That's
of,
it, Ralph Wiggum.
Kid.
That's it.
Hey, Mr. Simpson. Yeah.
Sorry, sir. Yeah, that's it.
But anyway, so it was really
funny.
cool. And then, so Stanley, I think that's still the coolest
Yeah, that is cool.
nerd moment we had. And I just was like, he was exactly as I expected him to be, which of course he would be, but it was really nice.
Yeah. That is
nice
cool.
Guy.
Yeah, that is cool.
We had breakfast together.
That's awesome.
That's how I tell the story. I had breakfast with Stanley, as opposed to just going, oh my god, that's Stanley. Oh my god, that's
Right.
Stanley. Oh my god, that's Stanley.
Right. That's funny. All right, mailbag.
You've got mail.
All right, Josh asks, hey guys, what do you think the over-under is on George beating Lewis at the British Grand Prix? You have an opinion on that, Grace?
I think Lando Norris is gonna beat them all.
Oh, wouldn't that
Damn
be
it.
hilarious? Wouldn't that be hilarious?
That would be amazing. I would be running up and down the street.
That'd be awesome.
And unlike winning the Super Bowl, where people would at least have some inkling of why I'm running up and down the streets with pots and pans, they'd be like, that lady's lost it. No. I'm going to go with Lewis.
Okay.
No.
Well, Lewis, he's going to be pretty buoyed. He had that podium.
And Silverstone
Feeling
should play
better. And
in their
Silverstone's
favor.
Silverstone. Lewis loves Silverstone because he loves the adulation. He loves the crowd, and they love him. And he's going to be motivated. All right, we'll split the difference. You're going Lewis. I'll say George is going to be really motivated, having been beaten in Canada and having had that hiccup with the quali thing. I think George is coming back, and he's going to be strong. So we'll split it. I'll pick George. You pick Lewis.
Okay. I think, Josh, this is a great like story to watch, right?
Yes.
I think that.
Watch this space. I agree. You gonna make it? You need the Heimlich?
No, if you can say I need the Heimlich, you don't need the Heimlich. That's literally rule number 1 of the Heimlich.
Yeah, right.
Which I once told that to somebody, and like in Canada, it's required by law that they hang those like in restaurants, like near the kitchen. And literally, I was like, somebody's like, that really is rule number 1. I'm like, I didn't make that up, right? Like, if you can say I need the Heimlich, you do not need the Heimlich.
Right.
So I'm okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right, man. It happens to the best of us,
I
oftentimes try to
well.
inhale. Oh, did it? Well, I always try to inhale liquid for some reason. I don't know why I do, but
I don't know. Sneezing is the worst when you're live in a
in
a work meeting, or you're doing your pod.
Or you get the
sneezing is
hiccups.
worst. Yeah.
Brutal. Brutal. Hate the hiccups.
Yeah.
So, all right, that does it for this podcast. What we think about the news. Let us know what you think about the news. Because I'm sure you have an opinion on it. Just share it with decorum and civility, as always. You can do that by going to theparcfermé.com. And a huge thank you to our patron supporters. You guys are so kind. I went on and I posted that we were going to be delayed because of travel, and several of the patron supporters say, dude, no worries,
thanks,
all in good time. Don't worry about it. We're here. Just such sweet people. So
yeah, everybody. It was all on me. I was out of pocket for a couple days, but
Paul's on walkabout too. So, and here's to Paul, because not only did he go up to Watkins Glen and the Aston Martin team win both classes.
I know, right?
But he took his family and they went on walkabout, and they're like exploring and discovering America up there.
It's great.
So so good for Paul. I hope he's enjoying his time, him and Mrs. Charsley and the family and the children.
That's right.
That's good.
The Charzolini family.
The Charzlinis. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations to Paul. Congratulations to Ian and the entire Heart of Racing team for both class wins at Watkins Glen. Paul actually got to do hot laps on Watkins Glen and says now it's challenging his thought because his favorite is Elkhart, but it's he says it's right there. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough tiebreaker, right?
Yeah, 2 good tracks.
Yeah, right? I mean,
not to mention Jimmy Clark raced there, Watkins Glen. That's awesome. Yeah. Jimmy. Oh, right here behind me, Jimmy Clark.
Yeah, that guy.
the GOAT.
I got
So there you go. Yep, there you go. It's good. All right, folks. If you like the podcast, go over to iTunes, give us some love, give us a good rating over there, as always. And we will be back because Formula One is going to its spiritual home, the British Grand Prix. And being the Anglophile I am, the British fans always do an incredible job supporting that race. And it'll be a lot of fun to see how that turns out. So we'll be back next weekend if I can find Paul and he's done from being on Walkabout, and we'll review the British Grand Prix. So until that time, next week when we do it all over again, this is Todd, aka Negative Camera, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.